Welcome to LOA Today. Walt and life coach Tom Wells here. Today is Friday, December 29th, 2017. Just 2 more days left in the year 2017. We're almost on 2018, Tom. It's hard to believe.
It is hard to believe.
Time just keeps flying. It does. It's just crazy. But we're here for another daily dose of happy here on LOA Today. It's currently 8 a.m. Eastern Time, and this is our first of the 2 shows for the day, of course. Tom, how's it going? I mean, we haven't talked since earlier in the week, but have you had any wins lately? Has it been a good week for you?
Yeah, it has been a good week. I got a new client.
Congratulations.
That was a nice thing to have happen.
Yeah, fantastic.
It's always good when I get somebody new.
That's terrific. So, yeah, that'll make your week right there.
How about you?
We actually Louise and I had a very interesting experience last night. We went out to dinner with 2 new LOA friends that we met online.
Oh, wow.
Which was really nice.
How do you meet them online?
Well, that's an interesting question. About a month ago, my wife comes to me and says, you know, we're trying to do more and more with the law of attraction in our lives. It would be really great if we had friends who were into LOA that we could do things with in the area. I said, okay, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So I gave it thought for a day or 2 and then got online and started doing some searching. And literally what I started searching on was things like Law of Attraction Connecticut, you know, not just that. When I do searches, I do like 10 searches. You know, I tried various combinations before I find what I'm looking for. And so I'm not sure exactly which combination I did when I found this particular couple. But I found them, and their names are Anne-Marie and Mike, and they're great people. We had a really nice dinner last night. Just great conversations. We were sharing stories about stuff we've manifested, and, you know, basically it was like, okay, well, that's your story now. Here's our story. Oh, well, I can outdo that story. It was that kind of fun. It was really fun. Cool. Yeah, it was really fun. It was great. So, yeah, it was a terrific win to have that kind of a meeting. That's something Louise and I are trying to do more of now. We've actually now met 3 people, the 2 last night and another woman that we met about, I guess it was a few days before Christmas. And we have a few more lined up. So we're trying to find a whole bunch of LOA friends in the area and just kind of build a local LOA network, you know?
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's what we have around here. There's almost every week there's a gathering at somebody's house of, 10 to 20 LOA folks. And they go on almost every week. Mm-hmm. So there's lots of people that I've met and can continue to meet in that community.
Yeah.
And it's helpful. To have a couple friends that always remind me of LOA principles in our conversations is really helpful.
Oh, yeah, it's huge because now you don't feel like you're alone anymore. Or like the joke I made last night, I was making a joke about it because we were talking about how hard it is often to have a whole bunch of LOA friends. I said it's like living on the island of misfit toys, you know? We don't want to live on that island.
The island of misfit toys. I love it. You're so creative.
Well, we all are. I've just dared to start using mine, that's all.
Yeah.
But the whole idea of reaching out and finding people like that's been really exciting. In fact, you mentioned, regular events and so forth. Anne-Marie was telling us that she has a thing she calls the Buttonwood Theater. She lives in Middletown, Connecticut, which is just south of us, about, I don't know, an hour south or something like that. Uh-huh. And that they have an event coming up on New Year's Eve that they invited us to. So already we're tying into an existing network. This is like really cool. Like, great. All right. Yeah. Where do we go?
Right. There's no reason why Source won't just expand that for you as long as that's what you want. You're just focusing on the good vibes, and
that's it.
You'll just attract more and more of it.
Which ties in very nicely with our topic for the day, topic you came up with. I'll let you introduce it since it's your topic, but I think this is one that's going to keep us pretty busy today.
Yeah, I think so. I call it dealing with fear, and the reason that I wanted to talk about this today is because I have a good friend that I was working with last night in some of my work on my website, and she's going through a situation in her life where, she's running out of money, and she's in her 60s, and to run out of money in your 60s is not a really good idea. Not a good idea any time in your life.
This is true.
She's up against a tremendous amount of fear. And so I ended up talking with her for about an hour and a half after our little meeting about technical things. And it just made me think about how much fear has been a theme in my life a lot. And I realize, of course, it's a theme in a lot of people's lives. And it can be very debilitating if we don't understand what it is. And so I wanted to talk about it a little bit because I talked about it with her for an hour and a half last night, and it really triggered it in my mind that, wow, I want to talk about this some more, something I'm always trying to get a better handle on.
It's amazing how powerful fear is, and it's amazing how prevalent it is. I mean, you mentioned that it's in a lot of people's lives. I would go even further than that. I would say it's in everybody's lives.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that, because it takes so many different forms. When you think about it, all of the negative emotions are in one way or another tied to fear. Depression is definitely all about fear. Anger, oh yeah, I'm angry about the fear that I have, and I don't want this fear, so I'm going to get angry instead so that I can cover up the fear. Disillusionment.
So I can try to get something done about it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, every single negative emotion is tied to fear. So fear is almost like the mother of all negative emotions. If you start looking at it that way, then you realize it just permeates our lives. So the real challenge here is to find a way to decide, can I live without fear?
Yeah, or for me, now that, being a law of attraction coach, the biggest question is what is fear telling me? Because
that's true.
According to law of attraction, right, all of our emotions are a wonderful, amazing, divine guidance system. So any emotion that comes up, it's simply this wonderful guidance system saying to us, there's something that you really, really want, and your emotion is telling you that there's some impediment to what you really want, and that you're the monkey wrench in the works. You're the thing that's stopping the wheels from turning towards moving you further in the direction of what you want. So what's the impediment in you that, what is it you're thinking is what it comes down to. What is the thoughts and beliefs? Beliefs are just thoughts that we keep alive. And so what is the thought that you're keeping alive that's stopping you from moving in the direction of what you want or from having what you want? And the fear is simply this wonderful thing saying that, you're doing something that's not working here. It's not in agreement with your higher self.
I like the analogy of the monkey wrench, too, because the monkey wrench also implies that a monkey wrench is a tool. It's not just something that jams up the works. It's a tool, and you can use it to fix the works that you just broke. So it's like the tool is built in with what it is that you're trying to look at.
Yeah, that's the thing. And so the fear is just something telling you that what I love. I heard Abraham say recently that someone asked him about their fear, and they said fear means one thing. It means that whatever you're thinking is bogus. And I'm thinking, wow, that's a powerful statement. Yeah. So something doesn't. Your inner being is not agreeing with something that you're thinking, and it's telling you that's not what I'm thinking. I'm not thinking that you want to go down that path. You're going down there with this thing that the way you're thinking about it, you're sabotaging yourself. There's another way to think about the thing that you're so worried about and fearful about that will lead you in the direction of what it is you really want. And your fear is an indication of how much you really want the thing you want. Mm-hmm. So if you have a huge fear, it's telling you, I must have a huge thing I want. And so the thing is, we've got to stop and go, whoa, with all this fear, what is it that I want? How can I look at this and understand? So the suggestion is to slow way down when you're in fear and start asking yourself those questions. What is it that I really want so badly, and what is it that I'm thinking that's stopping me from going in the direction of what I want?
And that thing that you're thinking that's stopping you from going in the direction that you want ties in beautifully with an acronym. There are a number of acronyms people have come up with to identify what fear stands for, treating fear as an acronym. Yeah. The one I love, I learned this one many years ago. The one I love is fear stands for false evidence appearing real.
Right. That's a good one.
I like that one a lot, because what that really is saying is once you've gone through the process that you just described, identifying what the impediment is, then the next step is realizing it's not a real impediment. It's one that's in your imagination. You created the impediment. It was invented, but it doesn't actually really exist, except to the extent that you create it. Which means if you create it, you can uncreate it. You can get rid of it. You can toss it away if you don't want it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But like, with this woman, if you're feeling that you're on the verge of being homeless, if you feel you're on the verge of losing the only place you have to live, and you're projecting those thoughts into how bad that is and how you're going to end up living in your car and the temperatures will be 10 degrees outside, things like that, it's like, well, what do you do with those kind of thoughts? And well, the thing is you got to, even in the midst of the greatest fears, the only way out of it, in a sense, or through it, is to think about something better.
Mm-hmm.
Like what, in the face of that situation, is a thought that can give you some relief and head in that direction, or what some action, or what some words you can say to yourself to move in a direction that feels even a little bit better. And ironically or beautifully, that's the only antidote. Like by talking with this woman last night for an hour and a half, she began to see that she had to begin to think of her life in spite of all this challenge, like how to think of it in some way that she could find something positive, something to focus on that felt better, or what action could she turn to that would give her some relief, that would feel a little bit better.
And I think most of us have been in that place, excuse me, that place that she's been in, particularly very lately. I know I've been in it in my life, not quite to the point of fearing that I was going to be in a car, although there were times when I was there too. And when you're in that place, you get stuck in that mindset. Like you say, everything just seems to point to, this is where I'm going to end up. This is terrible. I mean, my life is falling apart. All these terrible things are going to happen. And you just kind of keep replaying it over and over and over again. That's why you get so afraid, because it's the only thing that you can think about. What you're describing, the fact that it's the only way out, is change what you're thinking about. Change it to something preferably better, something that you can latch onto and say, you know what, it doesn't have to end up that way. I could actually make a little progress here, or even take it away from the context of what's happening economically and just shift it over to something that's non-economic, that's positive, that's going on right now. Because a lot of things are going on right now that are positive, but when we are just focused on that one thing, we don't see them. We don't see them.
That's
We don't notice them. It's the act of re-noticing them that brings you back.
Yeah, I agree. And sometimes the things that are positive, they just don't seem like they have the power to convince you if you're so strongly locked into the fear thought, the thought that's saying, I'm going to end up living in my car, or I'm so afraid that this is going to be a really painful situation to go through, and I don't want to go through it. And just to get stuck there. And you're right. I mean, we've got to go general, and somehow, like Abraham says, just keep making lists of positive aspects. Just keep making lists of positive aspects, because those things are actually really powerful, and we got to understand that focusing on them, like they say, if you have 9 things that are going wrong and one thing that's going right in your life, if you focus on the 9 things that are going wrong, your life will definitely keep spiraling downward. But if you focus on the one thing that's going right, that one thing can pull up all the other 9. And vice versa, if we're terrified about one thing and we can find 9 things that are going well in our life, then those 9 things can definitely pull up that one thing that we're terrified about. Instead of continually focusing, like we talked about that before, if you get a cancer diagnosis or some kind of thing where the doctor tells you got 6 months to live, it's pretty hard to not focus on the fact that I'm going to die. I got 6 months to live. This big authority figure just told me so. Of course, the first thing is go get another opinion and another opinion and another opinion. But the other thing is, wait a minute, if you start focusing on that, you are going to spiral downward. You got to start focusing on what is going right. What is going right.
And ironically, when like you said, we tend to, when we're in that negative spot, we tend to focus on it so strongly that when we're faced with the idea of focusing on positives, they don't seem like they're going to be powerful enough. And the reason they don't seem like they're powerful enough is we're focusing on the negative. That's the only thing we're getting any kind of a sense of energy from. We haven't taken the time yet to focus on the positives. We've identified them, perhaps, or maybe even identified abstractly that they exist, but we haven't really focused on them. So, of course, there's no feeling of power there. you don't actually get the feeling of power until you focus on them. And focus on them with deliberation and with consistency.
Because you've got to get a vibration going.
That's right.
That's other than the vibration of the fear. And, one thing that I have a friend, a psychotherapist, and she recommends, feel the feeling without attaching that same story to it. So if you feel a feeling, let's say the fear is centered in your belly and it feels like pain and it feels like there's a big knot in my belly. If I focus on just the big knot without the story that I'm going to end up homeless or the story that, I'm going to die from this diagnosis, so instead I just focus on the pain in my belly and don't give it a name and just say, this is energy. This is energy here. And let ourselves just be with that energy, that it will dissipate. That's the nature of taking away the charge we have on it with the story that we have connected to it of how horrible it is. And then, of course, once we sit with it and let it begin to dissipate and accept that it's there, then we say, okay, what's something a little better that I could begin to focus on? How can I take my mind off the diagnosis, off the fear that I'm facing of being out of money? What can I begin to look at that is positive? Well, I still do have a car. I still do have a roof over my head today. I still do have friends. I still do have my health. I still do have food. I still have a refrigerator with food in it. And, but I know what I've tend to do. I discount because I want so much to have what I want to have that I discount the positive things that are there.
Yes.
And yet those positive things are the way that I can gain momentum emotionally. And that emotion is the thing, the positive emotions are the thing that's going to bring me more positive things.
And that discounting is something we do in a lot of different ways. The one that comes to my mind right now is we discount by eliminating them. I mean, Louise and I run into this every day when we do our what we call our 3 good things or 3 gratitudes. We try to name 3 good things that happened that day to remind ourselves of what happened. Because if we don't do that, we've actually forgotten that they happened. They just slip right out of our minds. So it's as if they weren't even there. It's as if they didn't occur at all. And the act of reminding ourselves, oh, this did happen, and then reliving it again, re-empowers it and gives it the old power that it had when it first happened, and basically brings us back on the track of, oh, the life is full of good things. Life continues to have good things. Life will always have good things. And now all of a sudden we're getting away from that negative. We're getting onto the positive spin again.
And that comes down to one of the bottom lines of fear is you've got to, or any emotion, you have to be willing to change your point of attraction. That's what you guys do. You're willing to list those 3 things is all it takes in a certain sense to begin to move towards more attractive thoughts, to things that feel better, more joyful thoughts. Because you're remembering the good things that happen. But I think what people tend to do, and I've tended to do in the face of fear, is that I'm not willing to change my point of attraction because I don't believe I can. The fear seems too big. Like I was so grateful when I finally understood that I didn't have to be afraid of death. That death was actually just this wonderful transition into a whole other wonderful state of being. And in fact, something so much that it's almost like like Abraham said, if you knew how good it was, people would be flocking to die, in a sense. Because it's so good, And now I'm not saying that to encourage somebody to go out and die, but it's like once I realized that half of my life, was spent in fear of something going wrong, like you're afraid of getting a blowout when you're going 80 miles an hour on the freeway, and you're afraid of this thing happening and that thing happening, the fear of the dark, and these monsters coming and eating you alive when you're walking through the dark forest, It's like all those things are simply, they're just all illusions that because there isn't really this horrendous pit that we're going to end up in unless we create it. It's like we're the only ones that create these monsters,
Oh, we do.
And that's hard to believe.
It is at first. I mean, it's not hard to believe after you've climbed out of the pit once or twice, but at first it's really hard to believe. And like you say, I mean, when you're there, it doesn't seem like you can move. The fact, though,
that's the thing,
is when you finally do learn that you can move, what you're really learning is that you have influence and control over what you're going to feel at any given moment in time. I mean, for me, that was a huge revelation the first time that I discovered that, because I really thought my feelings were entirely and completely controlled and driven by the winds of fate, by, whatever happened in my life, that was going to cause me to have certain feelings, and there was nothing I could do about it. And when I was first faced with the whole concept of the law of attraction and the idea that you can influence your own emotions, you can push yourself up or down the emotional guidance system scale, I didn't believe it. I just didn't believe it. I mean, frankly, it just was not possible. That's the way I thought about it. But I tried anyway. Yeah. I did some of the exercises, kind of flailing around, not really doing them well, but I tried a few and tried a few more, and then over time I'd give up and I'd try some more and give up and try some more, and then eventually, just from enough trials, I found one day that I was able to move them. And the way I found it was, it seems so mundane to describe it, and I'll tell you what it was, but it was really quite the mind-opening experience, right? It doesn't sound like it, but it was. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. I like to take daily walks. I think I've told you about that. And my wife took advantage of the fact that I like these daily walks to give me a suggestion about how to improve my mental outlook. She said, when you take your walk, you're in nature, go out, and as you're doing the walk, take time, slow down, and just take time to appreciate things that you see in nature. So if you see flowers by the side of the path, go look at the flower. Go look at it up close. Look at the stamen pistils inside, and all the colors and the shapes and all that kind of thing. Look at the variegation of the coloring. Look at the contrast between the color and the green stalk and the brown earth. Study all that stuff. And so I was a little bit skeptical, but it was my wife, so I trust her. So I said, okay, I'll try it. And I went out and started doing it, and nothing happened. But I did stick with it. And after a while, I realized that when I was doing that, I was moving my scale. I could feel a little improvement. Now, that doesn't sound like much. But when you're coming from a place where you think that you can have no influence at all, that's like moving a boulder. That's like, oh my God, how did I do that?
Wow.
So when you understand that you're going to experience something like that, particularly if you're in that stuck place and you feel like you have no control, that first time that you experience that you've actually moved the needle is like, whoa, this is a whole new universe I'm living in here. I didn't know I could do that. And from that point on, I knew I never had to be stuck again.
Yeah, beautiful. And that's what I've learned through doing meditation. There's so many times in the last 40 years, because I've been meditating for 40 years and about an hour a day. And I
was going to say, that's a long meditation session. I had a 40-year meditation session, and boy, am I tired.
45 years. Yeah, well, the thing that I found that's so amazing so many of the times is that I could be in a negative emotional state when I sit down to meditate, and just by completely trusting that the meditation can take me somewhere different, just trusting that it could, and just doing the techniques, the meditation techniques, like, follow my breath and different things. It's so many times it just takes me out completely of that state. Of all the worry I was having about something, and puts me just in this place of calm and ease. And it's so fantastic. I mean, sometimes I would then get done with the meditation and slowly pick back up the fear or the problem, because I didn't know how to stay in that place, But I've learned over the years more and more, it's just a state that I can drop into that just sort of says to myself, everything's well, everything's good. Everything's always working out for me. It's like the Abraham stuff they say, you got to get to that point where you can you can believe and accept the fact that everything's always working out for me. Things are good. I'm in the right place at the right time. Somehow I'm doing the right thing in the right place at the right time. You can't always see how, but if I'm an infinite being, then I'm actually somehow I'm designing my life the way it's unfolding. I'm putting these impediments on my path. I'm putting these obstacles on my path. And I must be doing this for some kind of a reason that makes some kind of sense on some level. So I'm going to relax about it for one thing. And then I'm going to go to a place where I just chill out and put my focus on like my breath. I mean, when I was in the Amazon rainforest, I was doing this plant medicine with the Ashwar Indians in 2009, and I got so freaked out on my plant medicine trip, my plant medicine experience that lasted, for over 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
I thought I was going to die. I literally thought this could be it, because I was in so much pain. And what I realized eventually, I woke my wife up. She had also done the medicine, but then she had just gone to sleep, and she was doing fine, and I was like struggling like crazy with my mind for hours and hours and hours, and I was in terror, and I was facing, just so many thoughts that were just debilitating to me, and I was seeing, wow, I carry a lot of debilitating thoughts inside myself, a lot of thoughts of that sabotage my life,
Mm-hmm.
And the ayahuasca medicine was making me see it really clearly. This plant medicine that they take in the Amazon was making me see how I sabotage myself, and yet I felt trapped. I felt trapped in those thoughts. And eventually I woke her up, and I said, I need help. And she said, she got mad at one point, and she said, look, I've given birth to all three of my children at home with child labor that you wouldn't have a slightest idea what pain is. You say you're in pain. She said, follow your breath. Just get in touch with your breath and give it over completely, to your higher power. Just trust your breath. It'll take you through this whole thing. And once I heard that from a woman who had gone through childbirth with three of her own kids at home and had been in labor with some of them for over 24 hours, I said, okay, I can do this too. I can breathe through this. And that's what ended up taking me through it,
Mm-hmm.
was my breath.
Yeah.
I just trusted completely, and I just followed the breath up and back down. And ironically, that's what you do in most meditation techniques. You follow your breath up and down. And so there's a way to lock into such help. There's so much help right there, that no matter what the fear is, if I was dying and I was in a painful death situation, hopefully that's what I would do at that time. I would find my breath and I would follow it out, because they say your breath is the first thing that comes in. It's the last thing that goes out. Follow your breath, but trust that it's all okay. It's okay. Things are going to be okay. Like having this talk with this lady last night, it was like this woman, I was saying, it's going to be okay. And she was saying, I know, it is going to be okay, and she started to feel hopeful. She said, thank you so much for this conversation, because
Mm-hmm.
she said, I'm starting to feel some hope.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's got to get to.
The conversation that we had with our new friends last night, included in that conversation was a comment that Louise made. I don't remember the context, but it doesn't matter because it fits in perfectly with what we're talking about here, which is
Mm-hmm.
that breathing is the almost diametric opposite of stress. You cannot, your body is physically unable to be stressed and to focus on stress when you're doing regular deep breathing. When you're not doing deep breathing, your body goes into stress mode. And you think about it in terms of the fight or flight mode kind of thing, you stop breathing. And then you go into this instant takeoff thing, I gotta do something quick. But you're doing it in a shallow or no breathing state. You're taking in so little oxygen. Literally, the process of taking in oxygen is what de-stresses physically, from a physiological perspective. That's what removes the stress. So, of course, you got to focus on that. Yeah, it makes total sense, not just from a mystical sense, but from a pure physiological sense.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
That Abraham was saying recently, talking to somebody about, doing workouts at the gym, and they were just talking about how it de-stresses The person was saying about how it de-stresses them to go do the workout.
Right.
And Abraham said, it isn't so much the fact that you're using your muscles that is de-stressing you. It's the fact that you're getting more oxygen.
Right.
Because they said that the thing the body wants more than anything is breath. It wants breath. And we don't, in our modern society, we've learned to breathe really shallowly, like you say, and we have so much stress and fear that becomes a way of life. We live in this where we don't take in enough oxygen, and of course then we create these cities that are full of pollution, and it makes it harder. Like I grew up in LA where I learned that, just walking home from school, which was about a mile and a half, I would have to lay on the couch for an hour after walking home from school because I used to say it feels like a giant is sitting on my chest.
Ugh, yeah.
And because the pain that would come from the massive amount of pollution that was in LA, I mean, we couldn't see 50 yards to the end of our street a lot of times. We knew there was a big street down there, and it was 50 yards away, but you couldn't see it.
Right.
Or about 100 yards away. But you couldn't see the cars. You could hear them because the pollution was so thick, like I'm sure it is in Beijing and some of these cities in China and India now, where they're not controlling all this coal emissions and all these CO2 emissions. And, I learned to breathe really shallowly. And I actually got where I thought I'm really good at breathing carefully when I'm walking next to a road where there's all these cars spewing exhaust. But yet what that does is it eventually produces dis-ease in my body.
Yeah,
so
you thought it was a skill. Yeah, and it wasn't really a skill at all.
Pardon?
I said you thought of it as a skill, and it really wasn't a skill at all.
No, it was a coping survival mechanism.
Right.
But
Exactly.
I now need, more in my life to accept the fact that I need more breath. And it's a good reminder to me, like this conversation is a great reminder to me that, I live near the Rocky Mountains here, and of course we're a mile high, so there's not as much oxygen. But to go out and be on those trails and just be taking big, giant breaths of the air is so important for me.
Sure. Yeah, I can see why you choose Colorado, too, because the air is really fresh and clean and all that kind of stuff. It's good air.
Yeah, well, it's why they put the institutes here for lung diseases came to Colorado, I think, in the 1800s or early 1900s.
Oh.
And then they found out eventually that this is not the best place because of the lack of oxygen.
Yeah, right.
In the atmosphere. Like my son, who has asthma, he was so glad when he finally moved to one of the islands he moved to Puerto Rico.
Oh.
And he said, now that I'm at sea level, my asthma is hardly an issue at all. But in Colorado, it's always an issue because of the cold and the lack of oxygen in the air.
Yeah, so you're working a little bit more to get that oxygen. That's true.
There's another definition of fear that Gay Hendricks gave me. Gay Hendricks is a psychologist who teaches about conscious loving, conscious living, a type of coaching I got trained in. Gay and Katie Hendricks, and he said, fear, in his opinion, is the emotion of excitement without the breathing, without the breath. So he said,
nice.
Said it's like fear means that there's another part of you that's really excited about something, there's something that you really want, like we were talking about earlier, and then but you're in fear because you're not breathing into the thing that you really do want in your life.
Right.
You're breathing into the thing you're afraid is going to stop you from getting it, and so it's shutting down your breath.
That's really good.
You're looking at this obstacle.
Yeah, I like that. The idea that fear is getting excited but without breathing, which means that you can turn it around by staying excited and breathing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to give up on the exciting part; just give up on the part about not breathing.
I've tried that, and it does make a huge difference. Just to start doing deep breaths when I'm afraid, or at any time, like I talked about that in a previous podcast. Just how can be in a conversation with somebody and things aren't going the way I want the conversation to go, or I'm feeling uncomfortable in the conversation. And sometimes if I just go to my breath and I follow it, there's Gay Hendricks even teaches this thing called the loop of breathing, where you you take one breath when you're in a conversation, say with your spouse, you take a breath and notice what's going on in your body. And then the next breath, you loop around and notice what's going on with her. And then in the next breath, you take a deep breath in to what you're experiencing, and then you take a big breath and you notice her again. You notice her body, you notice her breathing, you notice what she's saying. You cycle. Mm-hmm. You cycle between your own focus on yourself and your own breathing and your focus on her and her breathing.
Right. So breathing becomes like a timing mechanism. It's a way of focusing on a number of different things. You're kind of involved in the totality of it rather than just in one part of it.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of the main techniques used in tantric yoga sex. If you want to be in an incredible sexual experience with your partner, one of the techniques that's most commonly used is to sync up with your partner's breath. Mm-hmm. And to where the two of you are agreeing, let's breathe in tandem and just be, relaxed about it and easy about it. But let's notice when we're taking the in breath and notice when we're taking the out breath and sync our breath up and see how that feels, in just holding each other in your arms or when you're actually making love. If you can get in sync with your breath, they say, and I've experienced this making love, that it's a very powerful way to heighten the whole experience and to, bring it more and more into a spiritual realm, you might say, a realm of satisfaction that is taking you to other realms of pleasure when you're making love, that are physical, but they're also mental, emotional, spiritual realms of feeling better and better, just feeling really good.
So I think what we're ultimately saying here is that breathing is not only an essential part of staying alive, it's an essential part of getting the most out of every experience in our lives. So mm-hmm. if we're experiencing things, if we're going through life and we're breathing shallowly, or we're stopping and starting breathing and so forth, we're basically setting ourselves up for that life of fear that we're all trying to run away from or whatever. Whereas if we go through the exact same life, the exact same circumstances, but we do it with a conscious breathing mechanism, if you will, a pattern that we're focused regularly throughout the day on. Keep the breathing going. Keep it going. I think a lot of us actually just learn to do it subconsciously without realizing it, particularly if we've been exploring like law of attraction and positivity for quite some time. I think it just becomes part of what we do without realizing it. But the more that we do that consciously, regardless of where we are on the emotional scale, we're bound to improve the life experience, even if it's a situation where we're, afraid of going into living in a car or afraid of a cancer diagnosis or anything like that. The fact that we change the breathing changes the experience and starts opening up options. That's the part that I like about it. The options start to appear that didn't appear before.
Exactly.
It's like they were not there one moment and there the next. No, they were actually there all along, but we didn't notice them. And without noticing them, you can't do anything about them.
Uh-huh.
So
the main impulses from source, what I want to follow throughout my day as much as I possibly can and learn to follow, is impulses coming from my higher being, from my inner being, from my infinite self. That is where guidance comes from. And when I breathe and relax, like I said in a previous podcast, I stop during the day often, and I just stop everything I'm doing. I sit in a chair and I follow my breath, sometimes for as long as 10 or 15 minutes, sometimes just for a few minutes. But that takes me back to this place where then impulses can come. I can start noticing, like you were just saying, there's other ways to be thinking about something I'm stressing about or something I'm concerned about, or just to slow down my pace in my day so that I get back into the rhythm of, to me, the breath is the rhythm that, I call it the pace that life is really moving at. Like life is actually moving at the pace of my breath. There doesn't have to be aging. There doesn't have to be dis-ease. There doesn't have to be all these other things we're freaked out about if we accept the fact that the bottom line is I'm breathing, and that's the most important thing. Without breath, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be playing this whole game. So let me go back to the thing that was the first thing that came into my body when I was a little baby that made me be able to be here. I'm going to go back and follow that and be in touch with it now and let it calm me. Let it bring me back to this place where then these impulses from my higher self can come alive in my life.
And amazingly, once we do that, all of a sudden, everything changes. The same situation exists. The situation hasn't actually changed, but what we see about it changes completely. That's remarkable.
It is. It's really an amazing thing. And I love how you just said that even if you're facing becoming homeless or you're facing a terrible medical diagnosis that you call terrible, it's like at that time, even when you're sitting in that doctor's office or you're realizing that you do have to move out of your apartment and you don't know where you're going next, you still have your breath, and you can find a lifeline at that time to your salvation, like I did when I was in the rainforest with the Ashore Indians. My only salvation at 4 a.m. from feeling that I was going to die of dehydration and this horrible pain in my stomach was I found my breath, and I followed my breath. And that brought me to the morning, and the sun came up, and my recovery continued on that track of following my breath. And it's also, I accepted the fact that it was okay that if I died, eventually I had to accept that. I had to accept that it was okay if I died. That I had been in that situation before in my life. I used to live in the woods in Northern California for like about a 3-month period, and these animals would come right up to my head at night, and I would hear this incredible growling, in their throats, and I didn't know what they were. I found out later they were raccoons. But they scared the hell out of me. Yeah. But I was laying in my sleeping bag, and I just accepted that if I die, I die. And so when I was on ayahuasca in the rainforest, some of the people I was with, that were helping me go through what I was going through, they said, just accept. Have you ever been in the situation where in your life where you just accepted that death could happen? And I said, yeah, I have. And they said, just go there and accept that it's just going to happen. Don't, just forget about it and just let it happen. So I did, and I fell asleep then. That's when after 24 hours, I was finally able to fall asleep when I accepted the fact that I could die and that it was okay. And sure. But then once I went to sleep, I had this amazing revelatory dream where the Ashore Indians came to me and they told me some things, which is hard to explain in this call. But the next morning when I woke up, I was a changed person. I've never been the same since that morning that I woke up, because it changed the way that I related to myself and to other people. I ever since then have had a much more relaxed conversational style about me, where I can be with anyone and I can listen to anything they're talking about and just be chill with it and just talk about anything in my life and be chill with it. And I used to be so much more uptight about my personal relationships. I was much more listening to what I said and evaluating and judging and, in blame and all these different places I would go into, and being more of a critical thinker, being more critical about my own thoughts and other people's things that they were saying, and much more selective about who I wanted to be with and who I wanted to listen to. And then I learned just to chill. And just to be open, be relaxed, enjoy the conversation, And I don't have to prove anything to anybody. I don't have to be anybody in the conversation. Just be an average guy,
Sure. Oh, yeah. Although I do have to say that when I have the experience of a furry animal coming up to me when I'm asleep, it's usually accompanied by a purr, because it's one of the cats curling up next to me. But nevertheless, what you went through there, I mean, something that life-changing is really very powerful. I mean, it's clearly powerful just in the way that you described it, and it had a huge impact on your life. The good news is everybody gets to have that. You don't have to go to South America to have that experience. Like you said, you can have it right here, right now, just by choosing to breathe.
Yeah. Breathe through the things that we're so worried about, and know that within the fear there is an amazing message about something that we really do want. And if we can just focus on things that feel better and find the thoughts, maybe find the thought that's the impediment. What's the thing that I'm thinking that's giving me this emotional reaction? Because the emotion is just saying the way you're thinking is not the direction you want to go. Right. That's what the fear is saying, So all the thoughts I was having when I was in the rainforest, they were thoughts that weren't serving me. They were fears of dying. They were, anyway, I'm not going to go into all those thoughts, but once I was able to breathe, then I was able to open myself to some better feeling thoughts. So
it's like
that's
Mike
what
Dooley.
It comes down to.
It's like Mike Dooley, what he says about it. He says, if you're going in a direction that's leading you to, in this case, fear, in this case, really horrible thoughts that are terrifying you and so forth, treat it like a GPS device that's giving you the signal. And the signal that it's giving you is make a legal U-turn. Go the other direction.
Yeah. Right. That's what it's telling you, things are okay. Things are going to work out, those kind of thoughts, that there's other things that are good in my life. What are the positive things that are taking place, and how can I shift more attention to them? It's a habit that we haven't really learned, a lot of us, that we weren't taught as much by the news media and our parents and teachers, that focus on positive things, focus on positive things. What if we had been getting that message since we were really little? What if the main message from the media was, yes, there was one murder that happened, this week over in the southeast part of town, but let's not put that on the news every night for the entire rest of the week and put that in people's face, or the horrible accident that happened out on Highway 95. Let's not keep putting that in front of people again and again and again. Let's talk about some really cool things that happened this week. What are some really good things that happened in the community this week, and can we focus on them?
Oh, yeah. Which is why we do our daily dose of happy here on LOA Today. I mean, because this is our way of putting up the alternative to that daily dose of negativity that the news media give us. Well, we put out the daily dose of feeling good stuff. And if you're enjoying the podcast, by the way, you're feeling good, you're feeling better because of it, you're learning stuff, share it. Share it on social media. Tell your friends about it. Say, hey, I'm listening to this thing. Check it out. Give them a link, because the more that we share the fact that this podcast happens, that we have 6 co-hosts, all of whom are trying to contribute on a daily basis to improving our exposure to that daily dose of happy. Well, more and more people need to know about that, and that only happens when people share it. So please share it with somebody on, Facebook or Twitter or whatever your favorite social media channel is, because they'll thank you and you'll thank yourself too. Because every single new person, like you were saying, Tom, every single new person who gets that daily dose, who's finding more and more happiness through exposure to programs like LOA Today, is just adding to the universal overall experience of, wow, a society that's growing into a happiness realm. So we've got about 13 minutes left in the program. One thing that we really haven't touched on too much, we've talked about people who have dread diseases or chilling prospects in terms of where they're going to live, literally, but we haven't really talked about the more day-to-day stuff. The day-to-day stuff that are like the average little fears that we deal with in the day, because those are the ones that are the most common ones. I mean, literally, they can happen dozens of times a day. And
that's true.
It should be obvious what the solution is, but let's just address that for a moment. How do you deal with all these endless little negative things that happen or seem to happen throughout a day? How do you deal with it?
Well, I'm learning to listen to what I'm telling myself. So I was buying tires this week, and so part of me, one of the guys I talked to at a tire place said, I said, what kind of deals are you offering on winter snow tires? And he said, deals? He says, there's no deals this time of the year. He says, if you would have bought them in August or September, we had deals. He says, but now, what we've got, that we don't have that many tires left, so we've got this one set you can get for $750, and I said,
yep.
Okay, well, let me get back to you. So, one of the fears that came up as an average daily fear is, Jesus, what if I can't find tires for any more than $650 or $750? I don't want to spend that kind of money. The season, we're already in the middle of the season. Of course, I was waiting because we only had snow a couple times in Colorado and practically no snow at all. And I had this newer car that didn't have snow tires, so I hadn't bought tires yet. So all of a sudden my fear was saying, oh my God, what if I have to spend $300 more than I wanted to spend? I don't want to do that.
Sure.
And so I listen to that stuff in my head, and then I say, okay, so if that's making me feel stressed and fearful, what's another way to think about it? And so the way that I started to think about it was, a friend said to me, she says, have your spiritual guides that you trust, the ones that you pray to or you talk to, and I have that in my life. So I said, have them find you a deal. Mm-hmm. And so I said, okay, yeah, there's got to be deals out there. I'm sure they're out there somewhere. So I'm just gonna intend that I'm gonna get a deal. So I walked into the discount tire store and I intended to get a deal, right? And I told them, they told me, well, we've got these tires here for $650, and I said, don't you have anything else, And I showed something on their website, and they said, no, those are all gone by this time of the year. And I said, so you don't have anything else? I can't get tires for less than that? And he says, I'll tell you what, I've got these Michelin tires, these Ice X tires. I'll give you those for $150 off. And so he did that. And in the middle of it, he says, oh, we also have if you do it on our credit card, you can get another $50 off. So all of a sudden it was going to be $450 instead of $650.
Uh-huh.
And so I said, okay, I'll do the credit card too. So he tried to get me the credit card, and it wasn't going through, not because of my credit, but because of some problem on their end. And so he says, well, the problem's on our end. I'll just give you the $50. You don't even have to use the credit card. So I didn't even have to get the credit card. And I walked out of there for $450 going, okay, I did it.
Yeah, you got exactly what you wanted.
Pardon?
You got exactly what you wanted.
I got exactly what I wanted. I intended to get it. I knew the law of attraction would allow it to happen. I trusted that I could send my guides, my helpers, and make this work out, and just trusted that it could. And so that's how I deal with everyday fears. I try to look at the thought that's coming up in me and go, is that something that I want to give energy to? What's an alternative thought that feels better? What's some other way I could imagine this happening? And how can I just go for that?
Now, tying this
into
you?
What do you do in daily?
Well, before we go there, I want to follow up. Now, Earlier we were talking about the importance of breathing and using breath to get ourselves into a better place. So I got to ask, what role did breathing play in your intention in the transition that led to this positive result?
Well, it played a role that day in my meditation because I had done an hour of breathing meditation that morning. So that played a role. So, and I was in a very, very calm place, to where I keep myself in a place where I'm in touch with this place inside myself that my breath takes me to when I do meditation. It takes me to this place in the center of my chest, you call it my heart, which we talked about last podcast, or even in my belly, where I feel just calmly centered and trusting, so that I don't let myself generally get into the place where if the fears are there, where I let them kind of grow. Mm-hmm. I don't let the fears grow. I just go back to this calm center and try to just know that that's where I want to come from in everything I do. It's sort of like being an Aikido master, a martial arts master. They always have to be centered in their chi. They have to keep themselves centered. And that's how when they do an action with their limbs, with their arms, and they strike out or they move, they're throwing their opponent off because they're so centered that their opponent, is distracted by that, and they make a move with their limbs that then throws them off. The other person throws themselves off balance, and then the Aikido master can then parry in such a way that can win the fight.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, by the way, about Aikido masters. The fights last about 2 seconds and they're done. They don't last very long. It's like, boom, all of a sudden they're on the ground like, what happened? Are you a sack of potatoes or something? I mean,
yeah,
they're real quick, which is good. I mean, we don't want a lot of fights. The thought that goes through my mind as I was asking that question, though, and I guess I can kind of lead into what you were asking me. When I'm in one of those moderate stress situations, the little things that happen during the day, the tires or whatever it is, I find myself subconsciously, without even thinking about it, doing, and instantly I've started the breathing process. Now, if I just stop there and hold my breath, then I really didn't use it to my own good purpose. But if I follow it up with, and just keep the process going, now I'm tying my breath into getting myself into that different frame of mind. And that's when I can start more easily putting out intentions. So if the intention is, like you were saying, to get, tires that don't cost $300 more than I'm willing to pay for it, okay, well, I can breathe my way to feeling like, okay, I can get the tires at a more reasonable price. Oh, I can do this. And then as I'm breathing, now when I put out my intention feels more powerful, more real, and of course it comes true. So the breathing plays a big role even in the littlest events, and it's not just tied to your daily meditation routine, which is good. I mean, I think it's great that you're doing it, but it ties in directly to what you're doing right now. You can actually use the breathing in the situation immediately to turn the situation around. So, yeah, like what's an example from my life you were asking me? Okay, yesterday I was working on a website for a client of mine that's a Catholic church in Milford, Connecticut, and we have a WordPress site that we set up for them, and they need a change to the template because they were merging two churches into one parish, so we had to make reflections of that in the template, and. So they also wanted me to turn the homepage into one of these things. It's called a parallax thing, and you don't have to know what the term is, but you've probably seen it where you have a page, and as you scroll the page, the background photo seems to move at a slower pace, but it's moving. It's kind of like this whole shifting thing. That's what they wanted for the page. Well, I'd actually never created one before, but I knew how to do it. So I put the thing together. It looked great on a desktop. Then we went to look at it on a smartphone, and it looked terrible. And I said, well, this is weird because the software that I use, I have a particular software that automatically converts it so that the small version, the small screen version works just as nicely as the large screen version, it just does it automatically. So I was used to it just kind of automatically turning it into something that looked good. And this is unusual, right? So, okay, what's going on here? Well, I did some research and found out that particular effect does a very poor job translating to a smartphone. Smartphones just don't reproduce it well. And so I said, oh. I wasn't used to that, right? This is a problem, right? And already, this is not a client that can afford to pay a lot of money. So I've already pretty much used up the budget. Now anything that I'm putting in is my own time, right? So I want to keep this as minimal as I can. Now that could be a bit of a panic situation, like, oh God, I don't want to have to keep doing this freebie work. I'm so sick of it. I could go that way, or I could just go, all right, there's a solution here. If I just relax. And I relaxed. And actually, you know what I did? I put it away for a bit. And then I came back to it when I was feeling a little bit better after some breathing and just doing other kinds of relaxation things. And when I came back, I thought, okay, well, I could try this. I did a little search on it, found, I could do that. And in the course of finding my search, I found that there was a WordPress plugin already made that would do it for me. I plugged it in and it worked. So what I thought was going to be this major thing got fixed in 10 seconds, but only after I got myself into a better frame of mind. And that's where the breathing comes in. Yeah. So it really does work.
I also did a thing with the tires that I do throughout my day to get in a better frame of mind, in which I told myself, hey, no matter what these tires cost, I can afford it. And I said that from a place of knowing that my budget isn't unlimited by any means, but the fact that I only wanted to give myself messages of abundance. And so I didn't want to have thoughts in my head. I realized that said, I really have to get tires cheap because I am financially destitute, or I'm financially in a position where I can't afford the more expensive tires. Instead I said, no, if that's what I have to pay, I'll be fine. Everything will be fine. I'm making plenty of money. I'm going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. And even though I have reasons I could doubt that, I definitely have reasons I could doubt that. But do I want to feed that doubt? Do I want to feed those thoughts? Those are the thoughts that fear comes from. When I think that the universe isn't going to take care of me, when I think life might not work out for me, it's the fears we have about what's going to happen in the future, whether it's the next second or the next day or the next week or the next year or 10 years from now. We're afraid that we're going to end up in a bad situation, so we act out of the fear rather than the confidence that life is actually abundant and life will always take care of me, one way or the other. It's going to take care of me. I'm going to take care of myself. Things are going to be okay.
Which is a powerful place to be. Tom, unfortunately, we're out of time, so we got to cut it short, but it's been a pleasure as usual.
Okay. Yes, it has. Thank you.
We'll see you on actually, we won't see you on Monday. That's right. We're going to be off on Monday for New Year's Day, but we'll be doing our next podcast on Tuesday. That means, Tom, I'll see you next Friday.
All right. Well, thanks so much.
And we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.